to go.
We're good to go. Welcome back to Garden Talk, brought to you by the Penn State Erie County Extension Master Gardeners. I'm your co-host for today, Mike Bailey, and with me is
Ellen Diplacido. Good morning.
Good morning, Ellen. Yes. Now, the last couple times we talked about starting a garden, didn't we? And we're not going to backtrack on that. But today we want to talk about different gardening methods. And when we talk about gardening methods, we're talking about here I am putting things in categories again, or classes. We're talking probably what we agreed upon was 5 different things, right? Traditional, mounded, raised beds, elevated beds, and container gardening.
Right.
And we're going to go and touch on those. And probably we won't get them all done in one session, obviously, because we talk too much. But the first thing
somebody does.
Oh, somebody does. But before we even touch on those, I want to, going back to our theme of let's not make this difficult. Because there's some gardeners out there or people who would like to get involved with gardening who don't want a big garden. They don't want an elaborate process. Maybe they're just going to, dig up a little section of the yard next to the fence or next to the house, etc. You put in a few tomato plants or pepper plants or, grow a few little green beans and things like that. And that's wonderful. So, but how do you get started on that if you haven't done that before? You could put things in a flower garden that you already have, right, Ellen? Right.
Mix those in with your beautiful flowers.
Yeah, there's no problem
like your
with
tomatoes, peppers.
Yeah. Things look good that way. Or if you wanted to take a little bit of a different section, of the yard that you have where you have some nice sunshine, etc., but you don't want it big. What you got to do though, when you dig that spot up, you got to skim that sod off the top. What you don't want to do is try to, turn that sod over into the soil, because what you're going to be doing, you're going to be fighting weeds all year long,
right?
And you don't want to do it
back into the soil.
Yeah, take the time to take your shovel and kind of skim that stuff off, and put it in a low spot of the yard and stuff like that. Turn it over, and it'll be fine. It'll fill things in. And then once you have that sod off the top, you need to probably loosen that soil up to a depth of about 8 to 10 inches. That's pretty good. And so if you're only looking at a spot maybe that's 2 foot by 4 foot or whatever, that's kind of easy to do, not too difficult. Then I'd probably
I like that size too, 2 by 4 or 4 by 8, 4 by 6 or something, not real big.
Yeah, not real big.
Keep it small.
Right. And then I'd probably go to the store and probably buy a bag of, little bag of peat moss or peat compost. I forget exactly what they call it. There's a number of different things out there, to get some organic material into the soil, and just dig that material in, and then go ahead and plant when it's appropriate at the right time.
Yeah.
The right because this is okay for the cool weather crops now. I mean, early,
put some lettuce and that in.
late in April, first part of May, that's fine. But for the tomatoes and the peppers and things like that, you really kind of need to wait until that soil warms up, and that's really not until about the end of May. Now, if you might have a little separate little ecoclimate, in your yard, okay, where maybe this is up against the south side of the house, and that's fine, and maybe that soil is going to warm up real quick. So maybe you can go a week or two earlier than those projections. You might be able to do that. So keep all that in mind. But again, I wanted to mention that because I don't want to make this whole thing difficult.
Right.
But now back
trying to say make it fun.
Yeah, make it fun.
You enjoy it.
Yeah, and try different. Try different things. You don't have to follow these directions. People said you got to follow. That's what I don't like. What is that? What is
That's
that?
Not Mike.
What is that? What is that garden where they spots it off, max it off, and square foot gardening? Okay.
A square foot gardening. Yeah.
I
did
sorry.
that the first year.
Yeah, I know that drives me crazy. I don't like rules when it comes to gardening. I make my own rules. You try different things, make it fun. Don't.
I know.
I don't want to get structured into this idea that I got to put 3 onions in this square, and 2 beets in this square, and 1 tomato plant in this square. No, don't do that to me. I worked all my life. I had to do all that stuff. Okay, so
yeah.
I'm done.
People should have been around when you and I first started because I went, oh, no, but it works.
What do we team up with, right? But
Yeah,
on
right,
with our regular programming, okay?
right, right.
What is this traditional gardening approach? Okay, you grew up on a farm, Ellen. You're traditional, right?
Right, right. Traditional is when you have a lot of space and you're just going to use the space you have and you plant in rows. Like
Yeah, and
it's like you have a lot of ground. Yeah.
you probably
Go
plow it
ahead.
up, right? Okay, or rototill it up with a
Plow it
big
up.
machine,
Rototiller.
and you have a
Correct.
nice big spot, maybe a half acre or an acre or even more,
Right.
and
Mhm.
then you, like you said, you plant things
You
kind of in
plant it
rows.
in rows. Yeah.
Okay,
So you
and
can walk between the rows and you can work it up and you can weed it
that's a nice
because there's a lot of weeding.
a nice traditional garden. Okay, because there's a lot of
Right. Uh-huh.
there is, you're right. There's a lot of weeding with a traditional garden, isn't there?
Right. It takes a lot of time and effort to have a traditional garden. So I think it depends on how much space you have and how much time you want to put into it. Maybe a traditional garden would work for you. And if you have good soil where you are, that you don't have to bring in a lot of other soil,
Hmm.
that might be. But I think it's best when you have large areas if you're not really planting a garden in the city or in a subdivision or something like that. You certainly wouldn't want too much of a traditional garden there.
Right,
So,
and
yeah,
then with that same approach, you could do mounded rows, couldn't you? You can take,
you
if you had
could.
a little bit of
Yeah.
a smaller area, and once you get it all dug up,
Mhm.
you can mound up that
Mhm.
soil and
Mhm.
into mounds that are maybe 18 inches across or something like that. And then
Right. Right.
once you get that, you can plant those mounded areas pretty intensively, can't you? I mean, you can put a
Yeah.
lot, a
You
lot
can
of
plant them
carrots,
intentionally.
and a
Mhm.
lot of
Mhm.
beets, and a lot of
Mhm.
beans, and a lot of other stuff.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
with the idea, I'm
And you're
sorry,
not
go ahead.
you're not you're not planting in rows, so it's higher density. And again, you want to leave pathways in between so that if you have to weed or work it up, you've got room to reach over so you're not walking on it. Things like that.
Right. And Ellen,
Yeah.
I don't mean to talk over you, but I'm the one that's watching the clock. Okay,
I know.
Ellen doesn't have a clock in front of her because she's
I
calling
don't
in
have
from
a
her remote
clock where I
location,
am.
and she doesn't know how much time we've taken, and we're already at 7.5 minutes. So,
Oh, I thought we
yeah,
must be getting. I didn't
yeah. So,
interrupt you, but I thought we
well,
must be
no,
getting
no.
there.
So we have to kind of terminate for today and pick it up next time. So again, thank you for listening, and Ellen, we'll see you in a little bit.
Okay. Bye bye.